for a great treat as he just lays it out pure and simple with you being the authority of your own health. So he does, actually, he is a real pharmacist and he does focus on nutrition and what the body can do when you give it nutrition. But he has and still is a pharmacist. If you are watching the live stream, then please go ahead and put in the comments where you're watching us from so that we know exactly which platforms are being reached. We are on more than a dozen, almost 20 different platforms now. So I love the fact that we're able to reach people where they're at. Make sure that you like our channel, follow our channel, give us some thumbs up, share us some love, because we want to make sure that people hear this message. You do not have to be slave to a system that is all about sick management, folks. We're all about achieving optimal health and doing what we can do to be our optimal best wherever we are. So my name is Becca Dukes, and this program is being sponsored by DailywithDoc.com. If you are not working with somebody yet, if you have never tried any of the products that are shared with on Daily with Doc, then feel free to join us on the website. And if you want to get hooked up and talk to a coach, I have an amazing team standing by at 855-949-3377. Again, that's 855-949-3377. Now we're doing a special raffle for the Q&A with Pharmacist Ben. So if you are wanting to enter in that raffle, which I hope you are, and help us share this program on any and all platforms, make sure you go to winit.benandbeccazoom.com. Again, benandbeccazoom.com. We have some amazing prizes that we're going to be giving away, and you don't want to miss out on that. Now, if I could just have Pharmacist Ben Fuchs, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for wanting me to join you.
Well, of course we want you to join us.
I'm honored. I don't take that for granted. It's nice to be wanted.
The fact that you were prescribing nutrition to people and actually lost a job because they said you might cut out for that position as a pharmacist, I think is absolutely fabulous, because you were standing up for something that you knew worked and believed in.
Yes, exactly. And, it's funny because in pharmacy school, we study drugs. We don't study healing. We don't even study health, really. We study medicine. And the idea being that medicine is supposed to heal you, or medicine is supposed to make you healthy. But as it turns out, that's not the case. And it's especially not the case when it comes to what we're talking about today, which is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Now, I was kind of pleasantly surprised when you wanted to talk about SIBO, because for a long time, the intestine was like Mr. Cellophane in that movie Chicago. Remember Mr. Cellophane, transparent, you could see right through him. Nobody really gave the intestine the credit it deserved. But I've always said that disease begins in the intestine. It's the first point on what I call the triangle of disease. And the triangle of disease, whenever I talk about the triangle of disease, I talk about the intestine, but I don't really mention, although I will from now mention, the core of the intestinal problems that lead to the triangle of disease, which is dysbiosis, which is a fancy way of saying messed up gut bacteria. Dys meaning dysfunctional, biosis meaning bacteria, dysbiosis, messed up gut bacteria, which is essentially a synonym for SIBO. SIBO technically stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and it's become kind of a buzzword or a catchphrase, but really it's nothing more than messed up gut bacteria in the intestine. And by the way, SIBO, dysbiosis, messed up gut bacteria in the intestine, first point on the triangle of disease that leads to everything else, is independent of gluten intolerance. Let me say that again. SIBO is independent of gluten intolerance. In other words, you could have problems with gut bacteria wreaking havoc on your digestive health, intestinal health, and be completely gluten-free. And so when I hear people say, you know, they tell me they have symptoms, and I'll talk to you about some of the symptoms here in a minute, health symptoms, but I'm gluten intolerant, I always have to tell them that gluten is just one of the things that can go wrong with the digestive system and lead to health challenges. And you could be completely gluten-free and still be dealing with SIBO, meaning you're going to be dealing with all kinds of, potentially dealing with all kinds of health challenges. Or under ordinary circumstances, bacteria in the small intestine are controlled. And we're going to do a little tour of the digestive system here in a second. But under ordinary circumstances, SIBO doesn't occur. Under ordinary healthy circumstances, SIBO doesn't occur. Stomach acid is supposed to take care of bacteria in the small intestine. Bile, pancreatic enzymes, the muscular and electrical movements in the intestine, immune globulins and antibodies inside the intestine, a valve that connects the large intestine to the small intestine, all have to be functional in order to protect against SIBO. We'll talk about that here in a second. So what do I mean when I say all health challenges can result from SIBO? I'm talking about all chronic health challenges, particularly things like irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut syndrome. And by the way, leaky gut syndrome is also something that has become sort of well known over the last few years. Leaky gut syndrome is, as the name implies, things getting into the bloodstream through porosity or openings in the intestine, inappropriate openings in the intestine. And that is one of the results of SIBO. In fact, SIBO leads to leaky gut as it leads to IBS. All manner of female reproductive problems and estrogen problems, including endometriosis and fibromyalgia and infertility and premenstrual syndrome and menopausal issues and breast tenderness and, God forbid, reproductive cancers can all be the result of SIBO. Hypothyroidism, which in turn leads to, it's the third point on the triangle disease, and in turn, that leads to all kinds of health challenges, can be the result of SIBO. Likewise, hyperthyroidism and autoimmune diseases. And one of the interesting things about SIBO is the causes of SIBO, the results of SIBO can also be the causes of SIBO. So, for example, you could have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth leading to hypothyroidism, which will lead to more SIBO, which will lead to more hypothyroidism, which will lead to more SIBO. So this complicates things even further. Same with diabetes. SIBO can lead to diabetes, and diabetes can cause SIBO, or even more, maybe more accurately, dysglycemia, which, like dysbiosis, means messed up blood sugar. Dysbiosis means messed up gut bacteria. Dys, messed up, biosis, bacteria, dysglycemia, messed up blood sugar. Well, guess what? SIBO can lead to dysglycemia, and then dysglycemia in turn can cause more bacterial overgrowth, leading to more dysglycemia, leading to more bacterial overgrowth. You can see what a big mess this can become. SIBO can lead to elevated stress hormone, cortisol, which in turn can lead to all kinds of other health issues, including more digestive problems and more SIBO. SIBO can be the cause, and usually is the cause, of autoimmunity, fatty liver disease, connective tissue diseases, arthritis, Parkinson's disease, neurological issues, Bell's palsy, Alzheimer's dementia, and Parkinson's dementia can be the result of SIBO. I've been in the skin business for decades, since the 1980s, and I can tell you this: cystic acne, psoriasis, eczema, all these conditions, unexplained rashes on the skin, all these conditions can be very, very frustrating, largely because we tend to go to dermatologists when we have these problems, when underneath it all is SIBO. Allergies, food allergies, and respiratory allergies, hay fever, seasonal allergies can all be the result of SIBO. There's a molecule called histamine, which is produced by bacteria. Yes, the famous histamine that's associated with allergic reactions, and it's produced by bacteria. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, excess bacteria in the small intestine, can lead to excess histamine, which itself can result in allergic reactions and the signs of allergies, and creates a condition called histamine overload, which will predispose us to respiratory issues and seasonal allergies. And nobody will have any clue that their seasonal allergies and their hay fever are not the result of pollen, but the result of SIBO, bacterial overgrowth. Food intolerances, including gluten intolerance, can be the result of SIBO. So you may think you have food allergies, egg allergies, or folks who say, I'm allergic to everything I eat, makes me break out, everything I eat makes me have an allergic reaction. SIBO. Chronic Lyme disease. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people every week who have chronic Lyme disease. Guess what? SIBO. Most chronic Lyme patients are dealing with SIBO. Likewise with long COVID. SIBO, depression, anxiety, brain fog, SIBO. And that's just the ones I could think of. There's pretty much any chronic degenerative disease, any chronic degenerative disease, forgot about heart disease, by the way, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, again, can be caused by SIBO. And keep in mind that many of these symptoms of SIBO can be the cause and the result of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you have abdominal fullness after meals, fullness after small amount of meals, suspect SIBO. Abdominal pain and cramps after meals, suspect SIBO. Distension, bloating, diarrhea or constipation, gassiness, weight loss, unexplained weight loss, SIBO. Nausea after meals, fatigue after meals, or just general fatigue, SIBO. Heartburn and GERD, SIBO. Belching after meals, again, SIBO. So you can see why this is the first point on the triangle of disease. And guaranteed, most of the people who are dealing with all that long list of chronic health challenges, in fact, any chronic health challenge, are also going to have some of these signs, these digestive symptom signs. So let's do a quick tour of the digestive system. And we did this, I think, last week, but it bears repeating. Digestion begins in the brain. Thinking about food activates digestive juices. Activation of digestive juices is one of the best ways that you can protect yourself from SIBO, as we'll find out here in a moment. Deficiencies in bile, deficiencies in hydrochloric acid, deficiencies in pancreatic enzymes, all of which are stimulated by simply thinking about food, can be causes of bacterial overgrowth. Chewing your food, salivary enzymes and mastication, chewing food, reduces the load on the digestive system and improves the crushing up of food, reducing the likelihood of SIBO, so making sure you're chewing your food. Then we come to the real core of the cause of SIBO, which is the stomach. This is really where SIBO begins, and that's in terms of low stomach acid. Stomach acid is very important for the digestive process, but it also has antibacterial effects. It's very interesting how antacids are the second or third best-selling over-the-counter drug, and way more people have low stomach acid, technically called low chlorhydria, hydrochloric acid, or achlorhydria, than have too much stomach acid. When we don't make enough stomach acid, the valve that connects the sphincter that connects the esophagus to the stomach becomes loose and flaccid, and the acid in the stomach, the little acid that we have in the stomach, will splash back up and we'll have heartburn. Also, gases that are emitted from bacterial overgrowth can push up, can create an upward pushing effect, and that can force acid through the sphincter in the esophagus. Both of which are really signs that are really causes of caused not by too much acid, but by bacterial problems or by too little stomach acid. So too little stomach acid can be a cause of heartburn, as can SIBO. SIBO can also be a cause of heartburn. The gallbladder plays an important role in SIBO for a couple of reasons. Number one, bile has antibacterial properties. In fact, it's a very potent antibacterial. And bile is also important for food digestion in the intestine. As we'll talk about here in a second, one of the problems with SIBO is food doesn't move through the intestine appropriately, and bile is important for digestion. So the gallbladder plays a role in protecting against SIBO or in the formation of SIBO if it's not healthy. And folks who have gallbladders removed are much more prone towards small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The pancreas also plays a role in protecting against SIBO and in the formation of SIBO if you're dealing with something called EPI, exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. And pancreatic enzymes are one of the ways that our body protects itself from SIBO. And then in the intestine itself, you have many mechanisms for controlling bacteria. The bacteria in the intestine live mostly in the large intestine. The large intestine is where water is reabsorbed and bacterial processing takes place. The small intestine is not supposed to have a lot of bacteria, and there are mechanisms to keep that from happening in the small intestine. If you think about it, that makes sense because the small intestine is a source. There's still a lot of nutrition in the small intestine, so you don't want to have a lot of bacteria because the bacteria will proliferate from the food that's still in the small intestine. The large intestine, you don't have that problem. So in the small intestine, we find antibodies that protect against bacterial overgrowth. In the small intestine, there is a electrical system called the migrating motor complex, or the MMC. The migrating motor complex, the MMC, propels food through the small intestine into the large intestine. And this is one of the ways that bacteria are kept in check by the movement of food out of the small intestine through the MMC. So you have antibodies in the small intestine to kill bacteria. You have motility through the MMC. You also have a valve that connects the large intestine to the small intestine called the ileocecal valve. And the ileocecal valve is supposed to assure that bacteria don't back up from the large intestine to the small intestine. You also have bile in the small intestine, as I said earlier, and pancreatic enzymes in the small intestine, and they're also supposed to keep bacteria in check in the small intestine. So you have many protective mechanisms in the small intestine, in the stomach, as well as through the gallbladder and through bile that protect against SIBO. So under ordinary circumstances, this shouldn't occur. However, there are a lot of things that can go wrong that can compromise these protective mechanisms. The number one reason, probably the most important reason why bacteria overgrow in the small intestine is because of low stomach acid. And low stomach acid can be the result, as I say earlier, of just frankly not producing enough stomach acid via something called gastritis or H. pylori. But it can also be, low stomach acid can also be caused by drugs, particularly so-called proton pump inhibitors, which is a great irony because people take proton pump inhibitors because they think they're making too much acid. When, as it turns out, PPIs can actually be, are sometimes used when we're making too little stomach acid, which makes the problem worse. Autoimmunity can cause low stomach acid. There's a condition called autoimmune gastritis. Hypothyroidism can cause low stomach acid. And ironically, as we said earlier, SIBO can cause hypothyroidism, which can in turn cause more SIBO via this low stomach acid effect. Bile insufficiency, not making enough bile, or having gallbladder problems, or having your gallbladder removed can also be the cause of SIBO. Antibiotic use, and you don't have to necessarily be taking antibiotics intentionally. You could be taking antibiotics accidentally or unintentionally through dairy or eggs or meat that are given antibiotics, fish that are given antibiotics. Antibiotics, as it turns out, are also one of the treatments for SIBO. Taking antibiotics indiscriminately, however, can kill off the wrong types of bacteria and lead the bad bacteria to overgrow, leading to SIBO. Another major problem in this country, probably around the world, that can lead to SIBO is sugar intake. Bacteria love sugar. And as it turns out, one of the best ways to prevent SIBO or to reduce the incidence of SIBO is to go low sugar, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Food intolerances, gluten intolerance, or damage to the intestine can cause SIBO. And again, SIBO can cause gluten intolerance, so you run into that cycle. You can also have issues with the MMC, motility issues. The MMC, the migrating motor complex, can be suppressed by drugs, opioids, notoriously, and pain pills in general, notoriously suppress the MMC. Food intolerances can have a slowing down effect on the MMC. SIBO itself can slow down the MMC, again, leading to this vicious spiral. Cortisol and stress hormone can slow down the MMC. Hypothyroidism can slow down the MMC, the migrating motor complex. And most interestingly, food slows down the MMC. The migrating motor complex moves when we don't eat. When we put food in our digestive system, the MMC slows down, which is why fasting is one of the best things you could do if you're dealing with SIBO. If you have small intestinal alterations, if you have fibroids, or you have surgical adhesions, or you have inflammation, perhaps from SIBO, that can create small bacterial intestinal overgrowth. Immune deficiencies can create small intestinal bacterial overgrowth because, again, the immune system is involved in controlling bacteria, particularly the intestinal immune system. If you have damage to the ileocecal valve, that valve that connects the large intestine to the small intestine, that can cause SIBO. And nitrates, which are used in preserved foods and probably preserved meats especially, and among the worst foods we can eat, right up there with potato chips and donuts and French fries, are preserved meats, deli meats, because of the nitrates and nitrites. Any farmer knows that nitrogen is important for growing crops. Well, nitrogen is important for growing everything. Nitrogen is a very powerful amino acid that makes everything grow, including bacteria. So excess ingestion of nitrates from preserved foods, or as in any kind of preserved meats or any other kind of preserved foods, can cause SIBO. If you feel any of the signs of SIBO, fullness, gassiness, weight loss, fatigue, or you're dealing with irritable bowel syndrome or estrogen issues, hypothyroid issues, autoimmunity, suspect SIBO. If you're dealing with any chronic health challenge that are notoriously difficult to treat. In fact, doctors will tell you that there's no cure for chronic health diseases, chronic degenerative diseases. That's because nobody is addressing the SIBO component. So if you suspect SIBO, and you should suspect SIBO if you're dealing with any long-term chronic illness, any that does not resolve itself, including cancer and heart disease, the two leading causes of death, you can have tests done. The most famous test is the breath test, which is a test where you drink a glucose liquid, glucose drink, and then they test for hydrogen or methane in your breath. Hydrogen and methane are bacterial gases, and bacteria respond to sugar drinks if you have too much bacteria by emitting gases, and they'll actually test for these gases in your breath. They can also do an intestinal fluid test where they'll actually aspirate fluid from your intestine. They'll pull up some fluid and then they'll do a culture on it to see if there's bacteria. Those are the two most common tests. Actually, the breath test is the most common test. The intestinal aspirate test, they don't do as much, but sometimes they will do that. So what do you do if you have SIBO? And again, suspect SIBO if you're dealing with any kind of chronic health challenge, particularly if you're dealing with abdominal or digestive issues in addition to chronic health challenges. So what do you do? Well, the most well-known treatment for dealing with SIBO is something called the FODMAPs diet. The FODMAPs diet is a diet that focuses on sugars. FODMAPs is an acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Basically, it just means just a fancy way of saying fermented sugar, fermentable sugars. Fermentable sugars are sugars that bacteria can eat. Fermentation is a bacterial process. Bacteria basically eat these sugars, and that process is called fermentation. So there's a special diet called the low FODMAPs diet. FODMAPs foods are foods that are mushy, and they have like a squishy quality. Beans and artichokes and pears and peaches and apples, and it's very difficult to understand the FODMAPs diet because a lot of the foods that are on the FODMAPs diet are supposed to be good for us, and they are good for us, which is why I always say don't go by specific diets if you're trying to control a digestive problem. The best way to control a digestive problem is to see what foods are problems for you. Everybody has their own specific foods that are problematic. The FODMAPs foods, the high FODMAPs foods, tend to be the fruits and vegetables and grains, but there are some fruits and vegetables, like, for example, berries are okay, and carrots are okay, and turnips are okay, that are okay. So it's really hard to know what foods are going to be good based on the high FODMAPs, low FODMAPs diet, are going to be good for you, your particular needs, which is why you want to do a food diary always. And if you suspect SIBO, it's a good idea to fast first. Fasting is all, and calorie restriction are going to be good for the motility complex, the migrating motility complex anyway. So whenever you suspect a digestive problem, and again, suspect a digestive problem if you're dealing with any chronic health condition, especially if it's in conjunction with abdominal problems, do a fast first, lay off of foods for a day or two, and typically you'll feel better. And then do a food diary where you write down everything you eat and then write down how you feel afterwards. You can go by the high FODMAPs, low FODMAPs diet, and there's a list of high FODMAPs foods and low FODMAPs foods on the internet. It's real easy to find them, but it's probably best to go by your own particular responses. As it turns out, protein foods, high protein foods, meats, fish, eggs, those don't have the sugars in them that people respond to. And this is one reason why people who go on the carnivore diet, or sometimes on the keto diet, which is a low sugar diet, will notice that they feel a lot better. And there may be some people here on this call who are doing the carnivore diet. That's a diet where you just eat animal products. I don't think the carnivore diet is a great way to eat, because you do need to have phytonutrients, that is plant nutrients, and adaptogens, as well as fiber that you don't get and vitamin C that you don't get in animal foods. So I'm not a big believer in the carnivore diet, but if somebody has a SIBO problem and it's leading to some kind of connective tissue disease or digestive problem, they're going to notice they feel a lot better when they eat carnivore foods, simply because carnivore foods, animal foods, eggs and fish and seafood, or eggs and fish and meat and seafood, don't have the sugars that will induce bacterial proliferation. So a lot of people do feel better when they go carnivore, but that's not a great way to eat, simply because there's nutrients in vegetables and fruits that you're not going to be getting, adaptogens specifically. Nonetheless, there's something to be said for it if you're just completely miserable secondary to SIBO. You have symptoms secondary to SIBO. There are also antibiotic herbs that you can take that will kill SIBO. If you go to the doctor, the main treatment, by the way, is antibiotic drugs. They'll give you Cipro or Flagyl or Remexafen, or there are various drugs that they give you to kill bacteria. But that's not a great strategy, because you don't know which bacteria you're killing. There's bad bacteria and there's good bacteria, and antibiotics kill bacteria indiscriminately. So that's the main medical strategy. But there's herbs that have an antibiotic effect that are a little bit gentler. Garlic, neem, oregano, peppermint, uva ursi. There are also essential oils that contain some of these. I'll talk about these in a second. There are soothing herbs also that can soothe, won't kill bacteria, but can soothe irritable bowel issues. Things like aloe and licorice root and mallow and colt's foot. These are various herbs that have a soothing effect on the intestine. There's an incredible, very important amino acid that is like medicine for the cells of the intestine. In fact, the cells of the intestine specifically use this amino acid for energy. It's called glutamine. And you'll find glutamine in most digestive formulas, particularly ones that focus on intestinal health. Fiber and probiotics can be helpful for SIBO, but they can also be problematic for SIBO. So fiber can feed bacteria. If you have a bacterial overgrowth issue, that might be a problem. But fiber can also improve motility. And fiber can also produce, bacterial action on fiber can produce something called postbiotics, particularly a postbiotic known as butyrate, which can be very important for the intestine. So if you suspect SIBO and you're constipated, you may want to start off by using small amounts of vegetable fiber or flaxseed fiber if you can handle it, and then kind of increase your dose with time as your body gets adjusted to it. But you got to be a little bit careful with it. Likewise with probiotics. In fact, some people will notice, I'm a big believer in probiotics, as most of you know, but some people will find that when they start taking probiotics, they actually don't feel good. And that can be because they're dealing with SIBO. So you have to be a little bit careful with probiotics, and you have to be a little bit careful with fiber, although both can be helpful. Fasting is it may be the single most important thing you could do if you're dealing with any kind of intestinal problem, particularly SIBO. Number one, fasting will keep nourishment from getting into the bacteria, so the bacteria won't proliferate. But also, as we talked about earlier, fasting improves gut motility. It improves the action of the migrating motility complex, the MMC. Bile salts can be helpful, especially if you've had a gallbladder removed. Bile salts are important for, as we said earlier, as an antibacterial. Bile has antibacterial properties, plus bile improves motility at the level of the intestine. If you had a gallbladder taken out or you have gallbladder issues, impair bile secretion, and that can lead to SIBO. So using bile salts, tell you how you can do that here in a minute. Apple cider vinegar with meals. Acid is, as we talked about before, low stomach acid is one of the most important triggering points for SIBO. Acid is antibacterial. Acid also initiates and improves motility at the level of the intestine. Butyrate is a fatty acid that is produced in response to bacterial action on fiber. It's a postbiotic, and one of the reasons why fiber is important is because it helps your body make butyrate. Butyrate has all kinds of benefits, including immune boosting benefits and mood enhancing benefits and satiety benefits. Butyrates are produced in response to the ketogenic diet. And by the way, the ketogenic diet is another good strategy for folks who are dealing with SIBO. You can get butyrate supplements. Those are readily available if you don't want to deal with fiber. If you're having a problem with fiber, you can actually get butyrate supplements. Activated charcoal can be a helpful strategy for people who are dealing with SIBO. Activated charcoal can suck up excess gases. And then using digestive bitters with your meals, things like dandelion and burdock root and gentian. You can buy digestive bitter solutions, or you can make your own digestive bitters by getting herbs like ginger and angelica and dandelion and putting them in alcohol and then doing like a little teaspoon before you start your meals. That can be very effective for stimulating digestive juices. Then there are some great longevity products that are important that you can use to help deal with SIBO. And I know I've said this multiple times, I'll say this again. If you're dealing with cystic acne or chronic Lyme disease or food allergies or respiratory allergies or movement disorders or Parkinson's disease or any of these other chronic long-term health challenges, working with longevity products that address the intestine can help improve those. So keep in mind, it might not be an intestinal problem specifically that you're dealing with, but if you have a chronic long-term health issue, you want to treat yourself as if you have SIBO or an intestinal issue, because it's likely that you do. So of course, whenever we're talking about longevity products, you always start off with the Healthy Start Pack. That's the mighty 90 essential nutrients. So that goes without saying. That's the first thing everybody has to start off with. But then there's some specific products that can help you deal with SIBO. Probably the most important is the I-26 hyperimmune egg, which we don't really talk about anywhere near as much as I think we should. I do it every day myself. I don't have SIBO, but I just do it just to support intestinal health. The hyperimmune egg is a really interesting product that is derived from chickens. They inject chickens with certain bacteria. The chickens make antibodies in response to those bacteria. Those antibodies come out in the eggs, and then they take the eggs and they dry and dehydrate the eggs, and they create a powder. And then you end up with an egg powder that is loaded with immune globulins, antibodies that are specific for bacteria in the intestine. And I-26 is a very powerful anti-SIBO food, even though I don't think it mentions SIBO, because when I-26 came out, SIBO wasn't really a big thing. But it's probably the most important longevity product for dealing with SIBO directly. Then there's essential oils. Oil we talked about earlier, oil of oregano, oil of peppermint, are specifically antibacterial. You can use those. Probiotics, of course, are helpful, but you got to be a little bit careful with probiotics. The Flora FX and the Nightly Essence and the Ultimate Microbiome. That's not exactly a probiotic, but it's a prebiotic that helps grow probiotics. You do have to be a little bit careful with them, as I said. The Fucoid Z, fucoidin, has a nice soothing effect on the intestine if you're dealing with SIBO. The Daily Digest is a really nice digestive supplement that comes in packets that you can use every day, and that can help folks dealing with SIBO. Of course, the Ultimate enzymes are important, not just because they contain enzymes, but also because they contain stomach acid, or at least a stomach acid replacement called betaine HCl, as well as those all-important bile salts that are so important as antibacterial and antimicrobial, and also to support intestinal motility. Betaine is really interesting. Betaine HCl is a combination, as you can tell just by the name, it's betaine plus HCl. HCl is hydrochloric acid, but the betaine molecule is also very interesting. The betaine molecule is technically called trimethyl glycine has three methyls, trimethyl, attached to a glycine. Glycine is a very important connective tissue and detoxification amino acid, and a lot of people are deficient in this very important amino acid. So betaine is a source. Betaine HCl and the ultimate enzymes are a source of glycine. And then the methyls that are associated with the glycine can help people who are dealing with methylation issues. Folks who have SIBO sometimes have issues with methylation, and you may have heard of MTHFR deficiency. And this MTHFR deficiency is kind of a generic stress, a generic marker of stress, and that can be associated with SIBO. So the betaine HCl that's in the ultimate enzymes has multiple benefits that can help the SIBO patient. And then I mentioned the ultimate microbiome. The killer biotic can also kill some bacteria that are in the intestine. That might be something to consider. And then one of my favorite longevity products is the True to Life 30-day detox, which can be very important for helping clean out bile. As bile becomes sticky and sludgy, and that's a whole nother story, bile is recirculated from the intestine back to the liver, to the gallbladder, back to the intestine, to the liver and the gallbladder. It's called entero, that means intestine. Hepatic, that means liver circulation. Enterohepatic circulation of bile being recycled, can lead to sticky, sludgy bile, which of course can compromise bile secretion in the intestine, which can lead to SIBO. So cleaning out bile with the 30-day liver detox, that's a Dr. Ariaza product, True to Life product, that could be something else that you might want to consider. So if you're dealing with any chronic long-term health issue, especially the ones on the triangle of disease, but anything really, consider that you may have a SIBO problem. If you have the signs of abdominal or digestive distress, guaranteed, in addition to these chronic degenerative diseases, guaranteed you got a SIBO problem. And if you don't address the bacteria in the intestine, there is no possible way you're going to be able to heal yourself or reverse neurological diseases, skin problems, food intolerances, brain fog, anxiety, depression, hypothyroidism, that long list of chronic health challenges that SIBO can cause. On the other hand, once you deal with SIBO, once you address SIBO correctly, all your chronic health challenges will begin to resolve themselves without addressing them directly. There's nothing you could really do to address them directly, but if you address the bacterial cause that underlies all of these issues, they will begin to resolve themselves.
Wow. I was taking lots of notes. That there's just so much that can be attributed to SIBO. All of these different things. I didn't know about SIBO before 2 years ago, but you just went through all of these different conditions that I myself was experiencing, and so many other people that I know who come to me are experiencing. So just addressing that SIBO, is that like the first step?
First step always. And that's why fasting is so important, and that's why the food diary is so important. That's the first thing. And for people who are selling longevity, you will, everything we talked about here, most of the people on this call, there's 20 people or so on this call, are somewhat familiar with the relationship between digestive health and chronic long-term challenges. But the vast majority of people out there have no idea that their Parkinson's disease is related to SIBO, or their Alzheimer's dementia is related to SIBO, or their psoriasis, or their cystic acne, or their fibromyalgia, or their reproductive problems, so, and on and on and on. But when we can explain that to people, just the way I did here, you don't even need to know all the details of it. If we can explain that connection, not only will we save lives, but we will help people understand how important this holistic nutritional approach is to overall health. We're providing people with viable options, or providing people who have had zero help from the medical model with viable options. And on top of everything else, you are going to be a hero when you change somebody's movement disorders or Parkinson's disease or dementias or any of these other health challenges, and autoimmunity especially.
That's amazing. And we have an amazing community of certified holistic health coaches, Ben, because as you're talking about the I-26, Jill is sending me graphics that go through all the different things that I-26 can benefit And there are 26 different conditions that the I-26 contains the antibodies against. That's just why I guess they get I-26 from. And there might even be more now as we're going through it. So I love what I-26 can do is we have somebody that has totally been released from all Parkinson's medications after being on the I-26 for less than 3 months, which you just explained why. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. But my question to you is, what if somebody has an immune response to eggs and also the I-26, because it's been tested, where they have a skin condition with skin modeling?
Say that one more time. You mean they take the I-26 and they break out?
Yeah, it has discolorations of skin and modeling of the colors of the
Oh,
skin.
modeling. Yeah, in response, like after they take the I-26, you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah,
within
yeah,
hours.
I-26 is eggs, and egg allergies are common. You know, that happens. Eggs contain proteins that the body responds to. I mean, the body's immune system is designed to detect the enemy, to detect enemy life forms, and an egg represents enemy life forms. Now, I will say that sometimes if you correct SIBO, your egg allergies will go away, and your gluten intolerances will go away, and your other immune issues will go away. So it may be that the I-26, you can't take the I-26 until you somewhat get the SIBO under control. You may want to get the SIBO under control by using the FODMAPs diet, or by fasting, or by improving motility with bile salts or stomach acid, and then try the I-26. So in other words, if you have food allergies, like if you have respiratory allergies, or you have food intolerances, which are a little bit different from allergies, they may be secondary to SIBO. And once you control the SIBO, you may be able to eat the eggs or the gluten or anything else. So if you have a problem with I-26, get the SIBO under control and then try the I-26. That's what I would do.
Okay.
And
Well,
that should be good news. That should be great news to people who love eggs. You know, people who love eggs but can't eat them. Get the SIBO under control. It may be that you can handle the eggs after that, or whatever it is that you have food, whatever kind of food problem you have. And that's really important. That's really important because we don't, you know, we think like, oh, I have hay fever, so it's the pollen's fault, and that's just, I'm going to have to live with it. Or I have egg allergies and I can't do the eggs. We don't realize that there's something underneath that is putting a load on the immune system. And once we remove that load from SIBO, for example, we may be able to handle things. We may be able to enjoy the spring without having seasonal allergies, or we may be able to enjoy eggs without having some kind of egg response, egg allergy response. So controlling the SIBO can improve our quality of life in many different ways.
yeah, that's going to be good news for a lot of people, Pharmacist Ben. That's what I was just going to say, because there are so many people that have food allergies or can't eat eggs, which of course Dr. Wallach is very much in favor of the eggs because of the benefit that they have on the body. So SIBO, folks, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Bacterial overgrowth, dysbiosis, and really, you know, while that gets, SIBO is kind of like a fashionable term now, and it basically means messed up gut bacteria. I've been talking about it as the first point of the triangle of disease for decades. It's the first point on the triangle of disease. You don't even have to know about SIBO. Focus on digestive health, specifically the intestine.
Well, I know my first event that I hosted with you was on the triangle of disease, and that was 7 years ago next month.
7 years it's been? Oh my gosh.
7 years. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Well, Pharmacist Ben, we do have some folks here with questions for you.
Okay.
Let's first go to I think Leslie's the first one. Yep, let's go to Leslie. Leslie, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Wow, Ben, my brain feels like it's bursting. There's so much information here. I'm trying to contain it. And I have a few questions. First, yes. I'm curious. I've heard of the term candida.
Yes.
Is SIBO by any chance
no.
another name for candida?
No, candida is a fungus. And
Okay.
fungal infection is different from a bacterial infection. SIBO is essentially a bacterial infection, not quite an infection, but it's bacterial overgrowth. Candida is fungus overgrowth. Fungus and bacteria live in balance with each other. So antibiotics, which can kill off good bacteria, can also be the cause of SIBO, of fungal infections. And then excess sugar, which will make bacteria grow, will also make fungus grow. So many of the strategies that you want to employ for SIBO are effective for Candida. Candida is much trickier because bacteria you can kill. Fungus is very difficult to kill because fungus reproduce with spores. And a spore is a very hard shell. And it's very difficult for medicine to get through that hard shell. That's why fungal infections are so hard to treat. And that's why the drugs that they give you for fungal infections are among the most toxic antimicrobials that we have. So fungal infections, Candida infections should be treated as a digestive issue, as a food issue, and you want to use dietary and digestive strategies to take care of it, most especially ketogenic and low sugar. And also using things like probiotics and good bacteria to help balance out the fungus. But again, if you have SIBO and you have fungal infections and they overlap, the symptoms overlap, by the way, so it's hard to tell which is which, you want to start off with your probiotics a little bit carefully, because if you have SIBO, taking too many bacteria may cause problems. So you got to start off with the nightly essence or your FX slowly.
What about the I-26? Is that something that
I-26 is more for bacteria, but it may work for Candida as well. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I think that's mostly for bacteria, though.
okay? And then you mentioned, thank you, to take veggie fiber. I don't know if I could find veggie fiber.
Yes, you can. You can find it in your produce section. You take veggies and you put them in your Vitamix, and you make a Vitamix juice.
Oh,
That's veggie fiber.
oh, okay.
All vegetables have fiber in them, but there's the FODMAPs issue. So you got to be a little bit careful with veggies, and that's why you got to do a food diary and see how you respond to specific vegetables. For example, artichokes, which I love, are a high FODMAPs food. Onions and garlic are a high FODMAPs vegetable. So while in ordinary circumstances they're good for you, if you happen to react to them, those are things that you want to eliminate, and that's why a food diary is important.
Would it be okay, or do you also recommend the psyllium husks that they sell for fiber?
That's good fiber, but it's a little pricey, and you can make your own. I recommend the best way to make fiber or get fiber is to make yourself a fiber drink. And this is what I do every morning. You get flax seeds, organic flax seeds, golden, ideally. Golden's better than brown, a little bit more nutritional value, organic. And you put them in a coffee grinder, and you grind up a couple tablespoons, and you put it in warm water, and you add in a little stevia or honey, stir it up, and drink it down. It makes the most delicious fiber drink. It's loaded with vitamin E and protein. There's probably as much protein in a couple tablespoons of flax seeds as there is in an egg. You get phytonutrients. You get great fiber. It fills you up for breakfast, so you don't need a full breakfast, and you're just totally full and satisfied. You can also do it before meals if you're trying to lose weight, or in the middle of the day when you tend to snack. It's a great way to get fiber, and it's really tasty. But you got to be a little bit careful if you're dealing with SIBO, because the bacteria will feed on the fiber. So you got to do it slowly. If you have a SIBO issue, you got to do it slowly. Start off with maybe 1/8 of a teaspoonful, and then a 1/4 teaspoonful, and then 1/2 teaspoonful, and then a teaspoonful. Kind of adjust the dose and gradually increase.
Great. That's really helpful. And one final question.
Yes.
You said something about nitrates, and I have a fondness for dried fruits, which I think you've said is probably not a good thing to eat.
Dry fruits are disastrous for SIBO. I didn't mention that. I should have raisins and figs and dates. The sugar is very, very concentrated, plus they're high FODMAPs foods, and they will definitely mess up SIBO and cause bacterial overgrowth. So you gotta be careful with those kinds of foods. What were you going to ask me?
If they were preserved with nitrates,
they're usually preserved with sulfur. That's a little bit different.
Okay.
Some people react to the sulfites that they preserve them with, but no, those are typically meats are preserved with nitrates. Nitrates are super high power preservatives.
I know. I'm working on getting rid of that from my diet. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
All right. Great question, Leslie. Let's go over to Ruth Ellen.
Oh, great talk, Pharmacist Ben. That's amazing.
Thank you.
We have Blake on Facebook, and he says, "What about lupus?"
Lupus is an autoimmune disease. There's about 100 or so different autoimmune diseases, 80 to 100 or so different autoimmune diseases. About 30 million people have them. Guaranteed 100%. If you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, you're dealing with what's called leaky gut, which is when toxins get into the bloodstream. That's the mechanism. That's exactly the mechanism. I mean, think about it. Your immune system's reacting to something when you have an autoimmune disease. So what it has to react to something that is coming in from the outside, and you can get an autoimmune disease like lupus if you have vaccinations or injections. But for most people, the culprit, the bad guy, is getting into the body through the intestine. So yes, if you have lupus, treat yourself like you have leaky gut, and leaky gut, the major cause of leaky gut is SIBO.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. And let's go right over to Jill. Jill, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello there. Hey, this was awesome, Pharmacist Ben. I couldn't take notes quick enough. Real quick before my question, I will tell you that I used to have lupus. I feel it's in my rearview mirror, and you were describing me to a T. Even the the treatments they gave me early on, like the moment I got diagnosed with it, and not one person ever told me.
Jill, I'm not quite hearing you. I don't know if it's me.
Okay, I'm going to try it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's kind of muffled though. Why don't you ask me your question? I'll hold my ear to my speaker here.
All right, I'm changing it. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, that's much better. Much better.
Okay, I was too far away from my headset. Sorry.
Okay.
Before I ask my question, I just wanted to say that I was diagnosed with lupus 25 years ago, and you just described me to the T, especially when I first got diagnosed with it. And not one person ever told me I had SIBO. I knew I had digestive problems, but you described me absolutely to the T. And I did much of what you suggested just over the years. And so
how's your lupus? How is your lupus?
Oh, it's been in my rearview mirror for almost 9 years.
I want everybody to hear that, Joe. You gotta get on. You gotta stand on a soapbox and a rooftop and scream that out, because there are so many millions of people who are dealing with that. They go to the doctor, and the doctor says you're going to be on this prednisone for life, and there's nothing we could do.
Yeah, I took hydrochloroquine, Plaquenil.
Hydrochloroquine, right? Okay.
I took it for 20 years, but it's been in my rearview mirror for 9, along with rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, the reason they give hydrochloroquine or Plaquenil, and the reason they give minocycline sometimes for rheumatoid arthritis, you may have heard that, antibiotics for rheumatoid arthritis, is because, and they don't know what they're doing. If you ask the doctor, why is minocycline working for rheumatoid, or why is Plaquenil working for my lupus, he'll say, I don't know, we're just doing it. Well, now you know why it's working. Minocycline works on SIBO. Plaquenil works on SIBO. They're treating SIBO, they don't even know it. That's why that's what they're trying to do.
But but the flagyl you mentioned hospitalized me. That's actually what caused me to end up.
Right.
It actually I ended up with that diagnosis after taking a repetitive dose of flagyl. Yeah. But anyways, adding the 90 and changing your diet makes all the difference. So anyways, I'm so grateful for this information. What's the difference between gastritis and SIBO, and how do you know?
Gastritis is a stomach issue. Itis, of course, means inflammation. Gastritis refers to inflammation in the stomach. It's a infection in the stomach. Usually it's an infection, a bacterial infection, H. pylori infection, that creates problems with the production of stomach acid. SIBO is the end result of gastritis, or can be the end result of gastritis, because of the low stomach acid. Gastritis causes achlorhydria, or low stomach acid. So gastritis is an infection or an inflammation. It could be usually caused by an infection, by bacterial infection in the stomach lining. SIBO is bacterial overgrowth that is secondary to or following the deficiencies in stomach acid caused by gastritis. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, except when I find people that tell me they have gastritis as their diagnosis, sometimes the ultimate enzymes are too harsh for them.
Yes,
And
because they have an ulceration in the stomach. Think about your stomach is like a bag, right, with skin in the inside, and you have a wound in the inside. Gastritis means an inflammation in the inside lining. You put enzymes in there. The enzymes can actually irritate that lining that's already inflamed. Does that make sense?
so then,
The
yes,
way you
it
deal
does.
with
So-
gastritis, the main treatment for gastritis is to kill the bacteria that cause the gastritis. Bacteria is called H. pylori. H. pylori is the most common cause of gastritis is H. pylori infection. You can also have autoimmune gastritis, and that's another whole other issue, but mostly it's an H. pylori issue.
Awesome.
So yes, you'll have a problem with stomach acid with digestive enzymes if you have gastritis. You want to take care of the gastritis before you put somebody on enzymes or even acid. Gastritis can lead to ulcers, and that can cause all kinds of problems.
So then what do you recommend for that?
Well, you have to kill the bacteria. That's an antibiotic issue.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, so I have a question, antibiotic issue.
Yes.
With what is in the killer biotic that Longevity offers, would that be beneficial?
It is. It's just mild. But for SIBO you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things I would do if you had SIBO. It's a mild antibiotic. It's an herbal antibiotic. It's not like a drug antibiotic.
Okay. And another question that we have coming from somebody that's here with us today is if someone says that their insulin spikes, even when they have very little amounts of sugar, could that mean that they have SIBO problems?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It can mean SIBO, or it could also mean cortisol, which can mean SIBO. Cortisol will also cause your insulin to spike. When you're under stress, your body releases sugar. Now, that stress can be from psychological stress, or it could be inflammatory stress. When you have stress, cortisol goes up, and that's inflammatory or physiological or psychological stresses. It's number one, right? When cortisol goes up, that will induce the release of sugar from the liver. Your sugar will go up. When your sugar goes up, your insulin will spike. So stress can lead to insulin spikes via cortisol and hyperglycemia, elevated blood sugar.
So
Makes
cause
sense.
and effect at its worst when it comes to blood sugar.
Yeah. So cortisol, the two major reasons why insulin goes up and blood sugar goes up is food and cortisol.
Food and cortisol, folks.
Yes.
Blood and SIBO.
Well, no, SIBO can be the end result. Well, yeah, SIBO can cause inflammatory issues at the level of the pancreas, which can cause problems handling sugar, and sugar can exacerbate SIBO. So that's another one of those vicious cycles.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a cycle that can be.
It is, but it's a vicious loop, but you can break it by working at the level of the intestine. That's why fasting is so important. Fasting breaks the loop, and then taking care of the bacteria also. But the first thing is to fast.
Would intermittent fasting be enough, or
No.
what is
Intermittent fasting is usually, when people talk about intermittent fasting, they mean between meals. It's usually not long enough. It's good because when you don't put food in your mouth, intestinal motility improves. The MMC, that migrating motility complex that pushes food through the small intestine, slows down when we eat food, and it speeds up when we fast.
Okay, so 3 days, 2 days,
Yeah,
3
2 days is good. 2 days is a good fast.
All right. Well, folks, a lot of information shared in this past hour. I hope that you were able to glean something from it that can be life-changing for you or for somebody that you know. Pharmacist Ben, fantastic.
All right.
Fantastic presentation. You are one of my favorite teachers, lecturers, whatever you want to call it, mentors.
I'll be in Dallas too. If anybody, for folks in Texas, I'll be in Dallas next month. September 16th, I think it is. Saturday, September 16th. If anybody Texas, I'd love to see you.
Yeah, so if anybody's in Texas, and it looks like we have one more hand go up. Ruth Ellen.
Yes.
There, a question just came into the chat. Could he once more explain the issue with onions and SIBO if possible?
Yes, onions are a FODMAPs food. So bacteria can feed on the sugars in onions. Some people have a problem with onions, shallots, leeks, garlic. And again, if you look on the high FODMAPs, low FODMAPs list, you'll see a bunch of foods that are high FODMAPs, a bunch of foods that are low FODMAPs. But it's hard to say which ones you're going to react to. So you don't want to necessarily go by these lists. You want to see how you do. So if you suspect you have SIBO, eat some onions and see what happens. You can tell that onions are a high sugar food because, and that's why we like them so much, is when you cook them, they taste sweet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, and I prefer them cooked.
Of course.
But okay, that's my question in response to what you just said. So if you have an issue with SIBO and you have onions, what are some of the things that you would
gas, bloating, discomfort. If you have long-term health problems associated with SIBO, like fibromyalgia, for example, that's the most tricky. To me, that's the most fascinating one because nobody has any idea that that's SIBO, and people go through like, I don't know if you know what fibromyalgia is, but it's a miserable. Did you have it?
That's what I was told.
Oh, it's just you don't have any
But-
more. Of course not. Yeah, I mean, it's just miserable. You can't even describe how miserable it is. Your whole body is. I've seen people with it. It's heartbreaking. Your fibromyalgia symptoms, or your Parkinson's symptoms, your movement disorders, your anxiety, your brain fog, whatever your symptoms are, they'll get worse. Immediately, you'll notice that you feel uncomfortable. You'll feel bloated. You'll feel gassy. You'll have digestive discomfort.
All right. Interesting. I know that's going to be, that little bit right there is going to help so many people understand why after they eat onions that they have these issues.
Yeah.
And for those that are not catching it, FODMAP, that's FOD, which is an acronym.
For FODMAPS. But it's really important. The reason why food diary is so important is because there are things in lettuce. Like you look at lettuce, you're like, what the heck could be in lettuce? There are things called lipid transfer proteins in lettuce that you can react to. And the reason I bring that up is because I talk to so many people and they're like, well, I'm gluten-free, but I still have my arthritis, or I still have my psoriasis, or I still have my whatever it is, whatever my symptoms are, I still have them. And we think we like hone in on one thing, like gluten or now lectins, which are bad, problematic for a lot of folks, but there's so many other things you can react to. And that's why it's important to do a food diary.
All right. We have so many comments that are coming in, Ben, saying, thanks, Ben. Always give us information that we can use. You're a great pharmacist, Ben. Thank you. And I have to agree with them 100% times 10. Because
you are too. Rebecca, you motivate to do this every month, and you don't let me forget. You're on.
And I bug you.
Every month. So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And
thank
folks,
you, Longevity family. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. And if you're here as a visitor, don't forget to get back with the person that shared this information with you. If you are in Texas, get with your longevity associate and get information on where exactly in Texas are you going to be?
Dallas.
Dallas.
Yeah, we should put it on Critical Health News, or we'll put it on the website.
We'll put it on the website. We'll get it put up there and shared also, because I know I have quite a few people in Dallas. We want to make sure that people have access to the information that can be life-changing and critical health news, yes, to them being able to enjoy life. And today's program, I think, was a big part of that. So thank you again once more, Pharmacist Ben. We will see you next month.
See you next month. Bye, everybody. Bye, Rebecca.
Pharmacist Ben. Bye for now. And if I can get my co-hosts up with me, I mean, we had a lot of chat going on. Marilyn, oh my goodness. Folks, if you are not in the live Zoom with us, you missed out on a lot of information that was being dictated as, put in text of what Pharmacist Ben was talking about. And yeah, she's like wiping her brow because her fingers were on fire. We told her usually, you know, Q&A with Pharmacist Ben is easy, but I think she just did more today than normal. And I'm so thankful for it. So thank you, Marilyn. And we also have Ruth Ellen Sanchez, who helps me keep the program, get it all set up, stay focused so that we don't miss anything before and after each program. So thank you so much, Ruth Ellen, for being my executive production manager. And we have her assistant who has helped us get on all these different platforms and teaching me more about social media and the importance of wording. We have AJ, so thank you, Mr. Joseph, for all that you do and for coming up with the idea of our giveaways, folks. I've been trying to figure out how can we do a giveaway? Well, he figured it out. So go to init2winit.benandbeccazoom.com. If you are watching the live stream or in the program with us, we have the other link that goes directly to that as well, so that you can enter into our giveaway and also share the message. So folks, if somebody has shared this message with you, make sure that you get back with them. If there is nobody to thank, then feel free to contact us. What? What am I for?
Albert.
I have not forgotten Albert. I have not. I just wanted to, you know, because I was on AJ and coming up with the giveaways. So yes, thank you, AJ. And last but certainly not least, somebody that is giving me bilingual instruction. Okay, I'm really trying, Albert. We have Albert coming to us from South Africa, who is teaching us Afrikaans and helping us to be able to be kind and polite, because he is the most kindest, gentlest soul I think I have ever met. Thank you, Albert, for joining us, as it is late there, your time, middle of the night. And you are, yes, ready to go to bed, but you find the importance in this program, for one, learning yourself, and two, being able to share, and most importantly, support the fact that we are our own authorities when it comes to our health. Don't forget that. Don't let anybody take that away from you. And when you have the wisdom and knowledge of the things that we share here on Q&A with Pharmacist Ben and Becca, or Daily with Doc, folks, you are so much farther ahead of the game than most medical professions that have not been taught the importance of nutrition. And this program is for informational purposes only on that importance of nutrition. It is not meant to take the place of your primary care physician, nor is it meant to prevent, or the products meant to prevent, diagnose, treat any disease. But as you heard today, when you give the body the right ingredients and cut out the things that are causing issues that have been promoted as, one, healthy, or two, convenient, even if it's fortified, does not mean that it's healthy, folks. Your body can do some amazing things. Let it do what it was designed to do by giving it the things that it needs to be able to not just survive, but thrive. So get back with the person that shared this program with you. My name is Becca Dukes. As the Director of Student Services for the Institute of Holistic Health, we have an amazing community of certified holistic health coaches who have been trained in depth more of what you heard today. get in contact with your certified holistic health coach. If you do not have one and you have never spoken to anybody about longevity before, please go to coachwithbecca.com. No, wait, that's if you want to be one of us, coachwithbecca.com. Okay. That's available to anybody and everybody. Again, coachwithbecca.com to get more information about our certified holistic health coach program. But if you are somebody that wants to get in contact with a health coach, you can go to DailywithDoc.com, use that contact option, send us an email, let us know if you've ever tried any of the products before, and we will make sure that we get you in contact with somebody who can help you best. But most importantly, if you've already spoken to somebody, get back in contact with them. So until next time, I think I got it all. Did I forget anything, Ruth Ellen? Yes, I forgot something. AJ shakes his head. No. Okay. No? All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here, and have a blessed and wonderful, and for those of you who are in part of this hurricane that's going on, this tropical storm, this typhoon, what I've heard it so far. Right now, I'm enjoying listening to the rain and praying that it doesn't get much worse. Bye for now.
Record.